Good afternoon. My name is Austin Knight, and we'll be talking about cover crops 101 today for the GEVO Climate Smart Commodities Project. Today we'll be covering a couple different topics when it comes to cover crops. First, we'll go over an introduction, a 101, if you will, of cover crops, meaning what cover crops are, mainly going into the benefits and why we're honing in on cover crops as part of this program. We'll also be going over some scenarios that are realistic for those in the strategic areas as part of this program, both Lake Preston, South Dakota, and Council Bluffs, Iowa, and then we'll get into how to get started as part of the program. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about AgSpire. So, AgSpire is a team of agricultural advisors, agronomists, and technical service providers that provides and or offers programs designed to assist farmers and ranchers as they implement new production practices and that are aimed at enhancing resiliency, efficiency, and we'll specifically talk about that in through the lens of cover crops this afternoon. But really, we work with producers to understand their needs or your needs and match that with the best practices in this sense to help accomplish those goals as a part of this program. My name is Austin Knight. I'm a technical advisor with AgSpire. I also farm up in north central, northwestern Iowa. And so we raise row crops and have a hog finishing operation there. I'm an agronomist by training. I'm a certified crop advisor as well as a technical service provider. So lots of experience, especially here in the Midwest and especially with cover crops and other sustainability practices in the area. So now getting into the 101, if you will, the college term for just the basics of cover crops. So when we talk about cover crops, I know they can come with some preconceived notions, if you will, on why are we really investing in cover crops? I'll get a lot of, well, they don't really work for my system, or why are we even trying to add this complicated thing where we have to grow another plant on the operation? You have to plant it, you have to take care of it, and then you have to terminate it at some point, one way or another. But overall, they provide really 3 or 4 key benefits. For one, providing ground cover. I think in both of the areas that we're looking at here, that we know for a fact that in the winter, I'm sure you guys have seen that there is, some snert, right? Some dirt is getting on that snow because we have a lot of bare ground during the winter. And so any sort of cover that we can provide after harvest of our main cash crop is going to have a benefit of holding that soil in place. And a benefit of having that soil held in place is going to be that soil health boost. If you can keep that soil producing in that area, you're going to see a lot of benefit there of keeping that soil in place. That will help boost the soil structure, the soil biology, and overall produce healthier plants, which really kicks into that last one there of enhancing nutrient cycling. If we're able to keep the soil there and keep the soil biology active by having a living root in the soil, we're going to be able to unlock really more nutrients that wouldn't otherwise be available if there wasn't some sort of plant soil interaction able to extract those nutrients from the soil. And the last one being pest resistance. Obviously, part of integrated pest management is cultural practices that break the disease cycle, and if disease and pest cycle for that matter. And so if we're able to add another crop or species of plant, if you will, into that mix, creating, a +1 of a total crop diversity, you're going to be able to reduce the risk of pests on the operation. When it comes to cover crop decision makings, you really want to follow a very linear pathway and figuring out what you really want for your operation. So the first step we go through is identifying, again, what are the goals, or what do you really want out of this cover crop? When we talk about the benefits, and then we connect that to the various mixes that I will be showing you here today, each one of those mixes is going to have slightly different benefits or things that it's very narrowly designed to do, but they all have the same kind of key benefits. But you do want to figure out what mix will best fit your overall goal, whether it be building soil health or reducing erosion or adding value or forage to your operation, weed suppression, or again, unlocking some of those nutrients or scavenging for those nutrients. You really want to make sure that that goal is defined, and then from there you can design your either single species by choosing, say, a rye or a triticale or a winter wheat or whatever it may be on the single species side of things, or go with a mix, which is what we have here today that I'll be talking to you about. Is, again, on these mixes and or single species, anything that you choose, they're all going to have different properties that may fit your goals better than others and are going to be more suited for certain geographies. In Council Bluffs and Lake Preston, most mixes and species that we're going to have are going to do just fine. That being said, in Lake Preston, we are going to have a little bit less rainfall overall for the year. So that is one consideration we would obviously take into account, as well as the available GDUs. So essentially the less amount of total growing time we have in a year, that has to take into account, when we seed and what types of species we're going to choose, whether it be a winter kill or overwintering varieties. The amount of time essentially left in the fall is going to play a big role in that. Growth habit will as well. With most of our with a single species matters maybe a little bit more than the mix, because if you have a mix, you can have different growth habits and likely will have different growth habits depending on what mix you choose. But in the single species, making sure that we are getting, that soil coverage with the type of species we're choosing, and also the soil nutrients that are currently available or the nutrients you want to be available. For example, there are certain mixes that we have that you want to place in kind of those rough areas that they're going to survive kind of regardless of what kind of soil you put them in. And then there's some that are very high producing, especially on the forage side of things, that you're going to want to maybe even apply some nutrients or nitrogen to really help that cover crop produce. Once you kind of take all the top parts here, we get into the species and variety selections, which we're really going to get into after this, when we are able to talk about those mixes. And then once we have the mix, seeding rates and making sure that we're getting an appropriate amount, not only for NRCS requirements, but also to make sure that you get good establishment. And then making sure you're taking into consideration any management changes. Again, likely with the mixes that we are able to implement in a corn soybean rotation, we will not have to have any management changes, but there certainly is the opportunity. If this is an opportunity for you to get that forage on farm, we do want to be able to help you through any of those potential management changes. like additional passes or pesticide changes or nutrient timing when it comes to especially those fall and early spring activities that you would normally do on the farm. When it comes to species selection, this is a big one that I wanted to hit a little bit more on because that's always the first topic is what are we going to plant? And we don't have enough water for any of these things. They suck up too much water, they hold up too much of our nutrients. But it really comes down to choosing the right varieties for the thing that you want to do and what your goals are. So we really want to focus first and foremost on water use, because if we pick a variety that's going to suck up all the water and use a lot of that and not return it back to the soil, that's not something we want to be taken from the cash crop, right? And then overwintering potential. Obviously, this is a big management consideration because if it does overwinter, that means we are going to have to do some sort of termination. And if it doesn't overwinter, then we let Mother Nature do the work for us and get that termination via winter kill, albeit obviously a lot less growth if we are planting in the fall and then it dies off in the fall as well. Nutrient needs, we talked a little bit about that already. Establishment timing, so when we're seeding these species, again, termination kind of goes with the overwintering potential and how we're going to terminate, whether it be utilizing for forage or mowing, crimping, chemical, tillage, etc. And any additional usage, so like mentioned, forage or grazing, and then pest resistance or honestly being a carrier of pests too. A lot of times we talk about in areas of winter wheat, utilizing a triticale or rye or even a winter wheat as a cover crop really isn't feasible for most operations because they are going to have either disease pressure or, in this case, pest pressure from volunteer rye or triticale, et cetera, getting into their wheat fields. All right, now we're getting into these scenarios. So the first one we have up is the mellow maker. And so this one fits into that either, well, likely the corn soybean rotation after corn harvest into your soybean fields. And so when we look at mellow maker, you can see the mix ratios there on the screen. It goes rye, radish, turnip, and rapeseed. And when we look at the mix here, obviously we have rye as a big chunk of that mix, which will overwinter, but the rest of this mix is primarily winter kill. So you get a nice establishment in the fall of some good species that are going to really hold on to the soil and also get deep down into the soil. But then those are going to winter kill, provide a nice cover, and then that rye that will also provide a nice cover will then come back there in the spring. And this mix will stay green late into the season, which will allow for some good growth, even despite having a lot of the winter kill. And this is a good one that is a good candidate for aerially seeding. So if we're, seeing a lot of the uh, fall activities getting in the way of cover crop planting, we can always aerially seed this before we harvest. And a pretty easy termination with just that rye. The glyphosate works just fine. And then the interesting thing or good thing about what mixes we're using with Renovo seed is that you can order with or without rye on here. So you can take it without rye if you want to use your own rye or your bin running rye. You can utilize that. But this mix is really aimed at reducing water and wind erosion in the fall and then early spring as well. So we got the Winter Wonder. This is another one that's good for the corn, soybean. So after corn harvest into soybean. So this one is also 50% rye mix, and then also has winter camelina and hairy vetch. So this is a really good mix that gets grass, brassica, and legumes that all overwinter to get some regrowth in the spring, which is great overall for cover. But with the legumes, we're also going to fix some nitrogen for the next corn crop. So you could potentially use this one into corn, but again, trying to be very considerate of corn being a little more sensitive to having competition early in its lifetime. Again, overwintering mix, you can do a aerial seeding as well on this one, or you can drill it, but you're going to want to, with termination, make sure you get a good mix together to make sure you get total termination that first go around. And then we have the prices, cost per acres listed up there, either $30 with the rye or 16 without the rye. So again, planting window is going to be in that late summer through fall there. The next one being kernel counters, so corn, soybean after corn harvest. This is one where we see a little bit different mix. So we've got a pretty even mix of oats, radish, and then 50% clover, with half of that being crimson, and then the other half being Balanza clover. So this mix does all winter kill. So this would be a little bit different, where you could definitely split this either in a corn after corn harvest into soybean, or even soybean into corn, because you're not having the overwintering provide issues or have issues in the spring with competing with the corn. So this would be a great one to fly on right, but like before harvest, to get plenty of growth there in the fall, and will provide enough biomass in the fall, especially if you're aerially seeding it. It can too with drill, but again, just depends on fall conditions. But you are able to get enough biomass growth to provide a cover, a mulch, if you will, that's going to make sure to keep weeds down in the fall, or in the spring, rather, excuse me. And with those clovers, they're also going to fix some nitrogen for you. So this would be a great one to fit in from your soybeans into the corn, provide a low pressure environment because of your weed suppression, and then also a little bit of extra nitrogen there in the spring to help you boost that corn out of the ground. So now, how do we get started? Well, it's actually pretty easy. So as AgSpire is helping on this project with GEVO, we are primarily helping with technical assistance, meaning that I, as a technical advisor, am here to help you figure out a plan on how to implement cover on your operation. And these are just a few different seed mixes that we can provide. We can do all custom mixes, but these ones really show a broad breadth of what we can do with cover crops and how we can fit them to your operation. Not just providing one species or one mix, but really showing that we can fit this into the puzzle piece, um, or as a puzzle piece in your operation to really meet your goals. So if you're able to get in touch with me, Austin Knight, so austink@agspire.com, or get in contact with GEVO too, and they can route you to me. But however you need to do it, get in contact, and we can have a farm visit, walk through that linear progression of your goals and species, and all the considerations that we need to, and then we can get you a plan together, help you order the seed, make sure everything goes smoothly, and come out and check on stuff after it's seeded, to make sure everything went well. And again, overall, just answer questions, make sure you're comfortable with what's going on the operation. So thank you for listening to this webinar. If you're watching it recorded, again, feel free to contact me from my contact information on the previous screen to get in contact with me to ask questions, or if you have any comments or are looking for additional information, feel free to give me a shout. But again, thank you very much and look forward to working with you either in Lake Preston or Council Bluffs. Bye now.